Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. It's been a while since I've put out a video because I have been moving to a different state. We've already moved and are starting to settle in, and so I feel like it's been a while since I've really posted, but I'm really excited to get back into creating content. And I wanted to present to you an idea that I've had in my mind for a couple of weeks now, and that is my top 10, my go-to games that I've played that I call a weeknight Euro game. For my circumstances, it's been easiest to plan board game nights on a weeknight or on a weekend after the kids are in bed. And so there is a limited amount of time for me to play a game, but I still really enjoy Euro games, games that are, I guess, if you don't know, like more victory point based, longer to play, very open and diverse with the amount of decisions that you can make, and usually tackling themes that are more managerial or economic in nature. And so, to me, the weeknight Euro is something that offers a lot of these opportunities in a board game, all of these diverse decisions, these crunchy decisions, tough decisions that you have to make, a little bit of interaction as well with other players, but offers it at a condensed playtime, usually between an hour to an hour and a half. And the scale usually falls in between a 2 and 3 on the Board Game Geek scale. And so therefore you can, I guess, condense all of these decisions and playtime into this limited allotment of time that you have to play. So a lot of these games I've either demoed myself and played myself as a solo experience that I've really enjoyed, or I have done this, in physical, in a physical environment where I've had people over at my place or have been somewhere else. I've played these games in a weeknight setting in only an hour up to an hour and a half, and have seen success. And so you will see obviously some Rosenberg games at the end. You might be able to guess if you are a follower of this channel. But I think this is another opportunity to talk about some of my favorite games that fit these criteria really well, and also talk about a few outliers that I haven't thought about in a while. And my number 10 is such a game, which is Zapotec. This is a game by Fabio Lopiano, who is a designer that I feel approaches this setting really well. I feel like he's made a lot of games recently that are at this 1 hour to an hour and a half time limit. It's a multiplayer game, and I also wanted to focus on games that you can play multiplayer as well in this time frame. Weighted exactly 3 out of 5 as well. It's a very much a Euro game. It's not as thematic as I would want it to be, which is why it's at the back of this list. But you're essentially doing worker placement actions to gather resources and build out these temples essentially, and claim your stake on a lot of these different land tiles for an area majority type of scoring that I found pleasant. It was a good game to experience. It definitely feels more like a traditional Euro, and so you might be able to fit a bunch of other games, and these might be some honorable mentions, but like Concordia, the Castles of Burgundy, a lot more of these famous games could also potentially fit in this time frame. But I did want to highlight Lopiano and his works that I feel like are best represented with Zapotec. I feel like his most recent Shackleton Base is a little bit longer of a playtime experience, but it does fit the complexity as well as Zapotec does. But Zapotec can do that in this time frame, and so I really enjoyed this game. I feel like I would play it again if I had the chance, and I would do so on a weeknight. Number 9 is Ginkgopolis. This is an older game from 2012 by Xavier Georges, where you are drafting these tiles, these different colored tiles, and building buildings essentially on top of them. You're creating a sprawling city that is made out of ginkgo. And so what I like about this game is that it does offer a lot of interactive experiences with building a shared city with these tiles. You're building on top of these tiles as well, and hoping to control them with your own colors, your own color of buildings. You get the majority of your points that way, I'm pretty sure. But you also have an interaction with the type of buildings that you're building as well. Some of them offering you points, some of them offering you resources and other things as well. And so there's a lot of planning and interaction that is involved in this game. And you can get this game done within 45 minutes to an hour. So this is on Board Game Arena for sure. You can try this out if you would like to. And if you know board games and have played a lot of them, you probably are familiar with this game. But if not, this is an older classical game that I feel like really plays very well in a limited amount of time, that offers a lot of interesting decisions in that shorter amount of time, and that's Ginkgopolis. The Tiny Epic series kind of falls under my 8th spot, particularly Tiny Epic Galaxies, which is I think the most well-regarded of Scott Alms's games. Another honorable mention, I had Beer and Bread on this list originally, also designed by Scott Alms, that came out a couple of years ago, but that is a 2-player experience. This one is more, for more players, and so I opted to put this on the list. But I really can't, I've only played this once, but I played this in person. This is obviously a very short game that it took about 45 minutes to play and teach. But this game offered a lot of decisions in the amount of time that was allotted. And, I apologize for not being able to go into the specifics, but you are gathering points by doing various things, such as exploring the galaxies that are represented by these cards, these planets that you're gathering. Each of them have special abilities as well that give you better, efficiencies throughout the game. You have some dice rolling and mitigation as well. And if I'm not mistaken, you have the opportunity to jump onto someone else's role or action to do a minor action if you so choose to. So it's like a following type of experience, which does help you feel engaged throughout the game, even on other players' turns, but it also helps speed up the game to allow you to play this game in its entirety in this playtime. So Tiny Epic Galaxies is fantastic. The other one's Tiny Epic Quest I really enjoy, and anything that in this line by Scott Alms I think will hit pretty well if you do enjoy games with some interesting decisions in a quicker playtime. I have to throw Harmonies on here as my number 7. It is exactly added to the bottom range of the weight complexity that I would have in this particular category of games. But Harmonies, I feel, does what, and I've said this before, I think it does what Cascadia does, but I feel like it's quicker. It's more condensed because of your condensed and non-expansile player board, right? It's a contained player board that goes up rather than just sprawls out. And yeah, you can get this game done a lot quicker, in my experience, than Cascadia. But even so, I feel like there are more decisions to be made in this game. What kind of contract cards do you pursue? And, what combination do you try to pursue in your game? What do you draft from the allotment here? Where do you place them as well? I feel like there are more options in this game. There are more decisions to be made in Harmonies as compared to Cascadia. And every time I've played Cascadia, it goes a lot longer. It probably goes, about an hour and a half, but sometimes it can go longer. And that's just my anecdotal experience. But with Harmonies, that has not been an issue. And I've been able to play and teach this game within an hour. So Harmonies is definitely one of my favorite games right now to play. Viticulture, I think, does reach the upper end of the playtime, especially at higher player counts. But Viticulture, my number 6, falls exactly where I want it to be in terms of weight. One good thing about this game virtually is that you can play it on Board Game Arena as well as its own dedicated app. And so that obviously creates a more efficient experience, but you do get the opportunity to do some worker placement, some very thematic, Euro style decisions to be made in this game. Card play, which I enjoy. I've compared this to Agricola. This is definitely a faster game than Agricola. However, the cards are more, I guess, tactical and reactive rather than strategic up front, and so the card play does feel a little different, but it's pretty similar in a lot of senses. And you can tack on the Tuscany expansion as well as other expansions with cards to make this experience a little bit more meatier with decisions. And so Viticulture, I think, is one of my favorite non-Rosenberg games that approaches the farming setting and plays in a quicker amount of time compared to some of other Rosenberg's bigger, titles such as A Feast for Odin, Caverna, etc., Agricola, etc. So Viticulture, I think, hits that. And when I talk about my experiences as well, of course, being very familiar with Agricola, with A Feast for Odin, I could probably play that with other experienced folks in a shorter amount of time, but trying to think about games that could reach a wider audience of players who are both slower, taking more time to make decisions, of which I'm guilty of, as well as some of the other players that I've played with, and therefore some of these games really do play in a shorter, and it feels like a shorter amount of time, despite the analysis that we have on our turns. And so Viticulture, I feel like, condenses and streamlines the amount of places that you can place your workers and the decisions that you can make to both grab the the analytical aspect of all the decisions that you're trying to make and the strategic decisions that you make, but making it more tactical as well with the cards to allow for a more streamlined experience. And so I think that's why Viticulture has succeeded throughout the years as such a wonderful game, is that you can do all of that in a relatively short amount of time and still feel like you've been clever and have made really cool decisions throughout the game. So I really like Viticulture. My number 5 is the White Castle. I think this is the epitome of what a medium weight quick Euro game is all about. This definitely plays, I feel like this plays a lot quicker than the 80 minutes, but I admit that I have not played this in person. It's all been on Board Game Arena. But nevertheless, you have 9 turns, 9 actions to pull off this dice worker placement game and to achieve a high score in a really relatively low amount of actions. And the point of this game, I feel like, is to try to look at this puzzle that is presented to you in terms of worker placement, cards that are different from game to game, the different bonuses that you have from going to these pre-printed spaces on the board, and figuring out which dice and color of dice would allow you to be the most efficient as possible to gather as many resources as you can on some turns and to benefit from spending them collectively, gaining as many bonuses as you can on others. And so, yeah, the White Castle is fantastic at presenting this Euro-style puzzle in such a short amount of time. And it hits, I guess it hits that weight just barely above what I'm looking for in a medium weight Euro, but it's pretty close to what I would like. And so the White Castle, I would never turn down an opportunity to play this game, and have done so quite a bit, actually, for the wide variety of games that I try to play. I've played this quite a bit and still enjoy experiencing it. And so the White Castle definitely falls on this list at my number 5. Number 4 is Earth. And of course, I think the most important thing about Earth in terms of having a shorter amount of playtime is the simultaneous aspects of this game. You are building out a tableau of cards, these plant cards as well as other types of like terrain cards onto your personal board. You try to go through a huge deck of individualized cards to create the best tableau as possible, and activating them in a wingspan style type of activation chain, essentially synergizing these cards to do so while trying to get the most points as possible. This game, because everyone takes these actions at the same time, in a very much the Race for the Galaxy type of experience, which could have made this list as well. I feel like Race for the Galaxy is a game that falls under this category pretty well. It's just not a game that I have played enough to feel comfortable talking about on this list, but so that will be an honorable mention as well. But the biggest comparison for me is Earth definitely feels quicker to me than Wingspan does. Although I think Wingspan is probably a little bit more streamlined than Earth. Wingspan tends to play a lot longer than I feel like it should. I feel like Wingspan definitely feels better playing it online or with people who do know how to play the game as well. And I've taught Wingspan a lot to other players, and it's kind of a similar situation in comparison of like Harmonies to Cascadia. I feel like Earth plays a lot like Wingspan. It is different enough that you can differentiate between the two, but it feels like it plays a lot quicker than Wingspan, and therefore fits this category very well. And so Earth is a game that I definitely enjoy. Number 3 is a game that I talk about a lot, and that's Age of Civilization. It's a very quick playing game. I've played this at 4 players, and it did go to the 60-minute mark, maybe a little bit farther because of the teach and some of the analysis paralysis that we've had in this game. But this is another game very much like White Castle, where you are given, I believe it's 6 rounds of play, in which you have a variable amount of workers that you can place from game to game. In similar terms to White Castle, you have the entire puzzle of what is ahead of you in terms of what actions you can take and what order these actions are going to be taken. And so therefore you can kind of plan ahead in what direction you want to take your technologies, as well as what buildings or wonders you want to buy and what civilizations you want to draft for your entirety of this game. And so it very much is a civilization themed game that's not like that doesn't really play like a true Civ game, but it's a condensed version of a Civ game that just plays really well. I think it's a very streamlined and efficient game, and it plays so quick, I feel like every game feels a little different because there are a ton of different civilization cards that you can choose from in the game, and they come out at, you only see a fraction of all of these cards in addition to wonders, and you can also make the technologies variable as well. And so it hits the right amount of variability for me, and because it's so short, it really hits that replayability very well and can easily be played once or twice in a weeknight. So Age of Civilization is my number 3. Now let's talk about my 2 Rosenberg picks of the night, and that's for my runner-up is going to be Glass Road. I like Glass Road a lot. I feel like, obviously I like it a lot because I am ranked pretty highly on Board Game Arena with Glass Road. I think now that I'm at that point where I have experienced this game almost 200 times, it's going to be less fun for me to play in person with other people who have not played it as much as I have. I feel, from my point of view, there's always something to learn from each game and from each player, regardless of their playtime experience with this game. However, I feel like it wouldn't be as fun of as fun of an experience for me as it is for the other players as well. Perhaps maybe because I might know too much about this game, and so that so it creates an unfair advantage, I believe. Regardless of that, I feel like this game, out of Rosenberg's games, really picks a lot of the strengths that I find in Rosenberg games and condenses it into a unique hour-long game that utilizes a mechanism that you don't see in a lot of his games, and that is the interactive player cards that you have, your specialists, that are highly interactive with with the other people that you're playing with, and there's a lot of opportunities for guessing games or head games to be played. If you understand what is going on your board as well as the other folks as well, you have the opportunity to really try to predict what might happen based off of what they choose. Having played Clash of Magic schools recently, I feel like there is a philosophy that Rosenberg had, about 10-15 years ago, regarding the ability to play playing cards like that game, which used to be Babel, as well as Bonanza, that are more interactive in terms of like trying to predict and get in the head of your other opponents. And Glass Road does so. It takes that kind of mind game, card game experience, but produces it onto a Euro style type of game, like Tableau Builder, right? And so there are many more reasons why I love Glass Road, but I feel like it really has hit very well. When I was a lot more green to this game, I feel like I could pull this out with my friends and have a wonderful experience within an hour, including the teach. And it might be different now, but if I were to choose a Rosenberg game right now, and this is my number one is Nusfjord. If I were to choose a game now that I would want to play, that I would have a relatively same amount of experience as those that I'm facing across the table, I would choose Nusfjord now, because I haven't had the chance to play this game like on a board game arena type of experience. And so this one does a lot of what Glass Road offers as well, but it does so a little differently with a more restrictive worker placement board. You still have a lot of the different types of cards that you're trying to draft onto your building, onto your tableau, and resource management, economics, etc. You have the unique Elder system as well, which gives you unique opportunities for different worker placement spots that only you can take, which is kind of reminiscent of some of the expansion cards that you see in Agricola, now that I think of it. And so I really like the amalgamation of a lot of the mechanisms, which are not entirely unique, but they come together really well and streamlined in this game. And I've had a blast playing this game solo, of course, but also with other people, up to 3 other people. I've never played it at 5 players, but I do know that I could get this game done in a weeknight with a teach with my friends. And so I've thoroughly enjoyed Nusfjord and am enjoying the big box version of it that is currently available. I think it's available now to purchase again, but I'm really glad that I got that and can continue to play this game almost endlessly because of that variation in the amount of decks that you have. One other honorable mention is Oranienburger Canal, which is a 2-player game that fits very well alongside Nusfjord. And so if you want a more 2-player type of experience head-to-head, like Beer and Bread, but more of a Rosenberg type of experience, look for Oranienburger Canal, or the new Silex version of Canal, which should be out later this year for retail, if I'm not mistaken. And or you can do Nusfjord. This is a great 2-player game as well. There aren't a lot of differences. The only difference is the configuration of the worker placement board, and otherwise everything is pretty similar. So those, in any case, those are my top 10 favorite games to play, Euro games to play on a weeknight, and hopefully I had the chance to talk about some games that I usually talk about, but also some new ones and some old classics that I would love to play again. Actually, this gets me excited to meet some new people here where I'm living now, and see if I could try to get some of these games done in a weeknight setting. But hopefully this list makes sense. Hopefully this list was helpful for you and entertaining. And let me know if there are, and these are games that I've played, right? And so let me know if there are any games that aren't on this list that I haven't played, perhaps, that could fit this. I would be very interested in those games and trying them out to add to this list, because I feel like this is my bread and butter right now, are these weeknight Euros. And so I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. Hope you schedule an appointment with me real soon, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.